I'm Catherine McLean, founder and CEO of Dylan Green, and today I have with me from Oakland, California, Devin Hampton, CEO of UtilityAPI. Thanks for joining us, Devin.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
You have an extremely impressive background, from your work on the Obama campaign to the DOE, to consulting with civic advisors, to your current role as CEO of UtilityAPI. Can you introduce yourself a bit and talk a little bit about your career journey?
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to share a bit about that. It's what you listed, right, is what we typically would have on a resume. I've done this, I've done this, and done that, but that's really only half my career. And I think a lot of times leaders, especially, only talk about the things that got them to where they are, like the steps. Where I had a lot of that's me from the time I became a quote unquote professional. But I spent years, I worked for an airline as a union ramper. I moved bags for 5 years until we got laid off. The union got laid off. That's a big part of my story. I met great people doing that work. I learned a lot of lessons doing that work. I also was a bartender in my hometown for years. I worked in hotels. I always had 2 jobs before I started this journey. I learned that part of the career is just as important, but it looks weird on a LinkedIn or a resume. So really, those kind of jobs will really set me up for success once I entered the kind of political space. We could go all day how long it took me to get from that work into working for President Obama and not running a company. But I really just think it's important that I learned something in each step of the way and then able to use it for what I do now.
Yeah. And, there are many people of color that would look up to you as a CEO and maybe working at Alaska Airlines, trying to aspire to be what you've become.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most contributing factor to your career success?
I think part of it's inside and part of it's outside, right? So I'm a total optimist. And so I always believe that I can do something. And even if something doesn't work out, I just believe that that's the lesson I need to learn for whatever happens next. I'm a strong believer. I think the phrase is, good problem, bad problem, who knows? I learned that from actually a colleague of mine, our COO at our company, because she lives by that as well. That every time a door shuts, it's probably okay. The next thing that's going to happen, because that's probably what we need to happen anyway. So first of all, there's the optimism part, but I've also had a lot of people along the way who probably saw more in me than I saw in myself. I got my start in politics because I was asking people at the bar that I worked at how to do that. I was interested in it, but I didn't know how to do it. And literally a patron was like, "Hey, I'm actually running for city council, and you can come work for me. I've really enjoyed talking to you across the bar. I think you have certain skills. You could probably do this. I'll give you a chance."
Wow.
Right. And that was how I got into politics, actually. And from there, I knew how to work hard. I've always known how to work hard. But it was the learning, the kind of, every industry, every space has different, lexicons, way of people talking about things, different way to identify that you're in the in-group. And it was really these folks that would spend time to really bring me in. I was very fortunate. City council members, who else along the way? I worked for a secretary, a deputy secretary, an assistant secretary of energy. All spent time to make sure that I had what it took, but also pushed me. I remember the first time I had a woman boss. She asked me if I'd ever worked for a woman before. Mm-hmm. Those kind of lessons are important. A professor at the University of Washington, even though it took me 20 years to graduate, stood by me for 20 years. Right?
20 years to graduate, yeah.
20 years to graduate, stood by me for 20 years, right?
It actually took you 20 years to graduate.
Yeah, I'm not lying. Yeah. No, okay, you're right. That is not right. It was 19 years.
19 years.
Yeah. So there's a lot of folks along the way that, it's a bit of, personal grit, optimism, knowing how to work hard. But, I think when people gave me that, raised their hand to help me out, or reached a hand to help me out, I grabbed it. So I try to do that now for other folks.
Yeah.
anytime someone sends me a note on LinkedIn or anything, hey, can we get coffee? Can we chat? I'm like, sure thing. Like, you got an hour. What do you need? It's because people do it for me.
Yeah, God, I think that's really admirable, and I feel exactly the same way. So I think it's a really good attribute to have. So I want to talk a little bit about CLI. I know that you just started getting involved with CLI, which is an organization I think really highly of, the Clean Energy Leadership Institute. So UtilityAPI and about 20 other companies recently partnered with CLI to facilitate more diverse hires within the clean tech industry. Can you talk about this partnership and why specifically you're confident it's going to lead to greater diversity, equity, inclusion in our industry? I'm specifically interested in what sets this apart from the broader CEO Action for Diversity and Inclusion pledge.
Yeah. Well, I'll start at the end. What sets us apart, right, is we did not want to set out to start a new organization or just to like put some statement out and then leave it at that. Like, we wanted action. And so, UtilityAPI and a handful, well, 20 other, at least so far, companies in the clean tech space said, all right, what can we actually do? We don't want to start a new organization because people already know how to do this. We found CLI. And like, oh my Lord, this group is set up to help enable the challenge that we're trying to solve. And that challenge is that, it's a traditional supply and demand problem. We know that diversity is good for business. We know that it will help our industry. But we're not being vocal enough about showing that there's a demand for diverse voices. And so when a group like CLI goes out and tries to increase that supply, where's the other side of the equation? So we're trying to be, as a group of companies, to be the other side of the equation, saying, hey, we are looking for diverse voices in our conference rooms, in our boardrooms, and everywhere else in between. That diversity is strength, diversity is good for business, and that we will do what it takes. And so we've actually made commitments about the steps we're going to take, whether it's for looking for early stage hires, mid-career, senior officials, really anybody. We're going to have the uncomfortable conversations within our own companies to make folks feel comfortable when they come to work with us. We are going to spend the time and effort it takes to actually interview diverse hires for all our job openings. We're going to pay interns when we do have interns. Right? We're not going to have a college degree be a requirement for any of our jobs. I mean, if that was a requirement for any of the jobs I've had, I wouldn't be sitting here. And so I think that differentiator is the action piece. Is we are spelling out exactly what we're going to do. We are going out and finding money to pay for those programs, and then we are going to launch those programs, and then we're going to hold ourselves accountable. Just as the rest of us do in our businesses day to day. We go out, we raise capital, we tell people what we're going to do with that capital. And if we don't do what we said we're going to do with that capital, we get held accountable. We know that model very well. And so we're just going to take what we find as a successful model and we're going to apply it to this challenge.